It's the end of the day with Ray. This is a Saturday special. Folks, I'm really excited today because I have a lady that is a fantastic executive coach. I met her online in that digital landscape. Her name is Beth Armknecht Miller. She owns a company called Executive Velocity. And Beth, it's fantastic to have you on the end of the day with Ray. How are you doing?
I am doing great, Ray. I've been looking forward to this conversation.
Well, I had a fellow from Nashville. He owns an office products group, and he was talking about generational culture and how you have to lead through that generational culture. I was doing a little studying after we had talked, and you have a saying on Beth's website. So go to executivevelocity.com. But the saying right when you get to her home page is good isn't good enough. I would add any more for sure, but good isn't good enough, and we have to figure out how we're going to make not only our teams great, but a lot of times leaders themselves are missing some things that could help them be great. So what are you seeing today, Beth, just in the COVID-19 atmosphere?
I'm seeing a lot, Ray. From a leadership perspective, there's had to be a lot of shifts made pretty quickly, and now that leaders are into kind of the routine of connecting virtually or coming back into the workplace. One of the areas I see a lot of stress on is that leaders are more focused on employee well-being than they were in the past. They understand that each individual has a certain personal situation that they're dealing with at home that's impacting how they're performing. So they're being very mindful about connecting with employees on a personal level first and doing that kind of check-in of, hey, what can I be doing for you to help you through this? Now, that's all great, but one of my concerns is that many of these leaders, while they're helping their employees, they're not paying attention to themselves and giving themselves the care that they need. The exercise, the mindfulness, meditation, whatever it is for that leader to regenerate. It's kind of like the saying of, put the oxygen mask on first and then help somebody else out. Well, that's something that I'm encouraging many leaders because they're worn out. And we're all worn out, but if you're so worn out, you can't be present with your employees and really help them.
Well, that's a great point, and I like the oxygen mask scenario. We've all been on planes many times and heard that, but I would imagine during these times, and you're exactly right. Leaders, they care about their people. They always have. They're trying to build the greatest teams they have. Are you, when you talk to these leaders, are they actually spending a lot of time on the Zoom or whatever apparatus they're using in one-on-ones with their people where they really didn't spend the time before?
Yeah, they are, but I would say that many of them pre-COVID were having those one-to-one conversations. If they weren't, then there's a bit of a hurdle there of really trying to build up that trust and communication with the individual virtually versus in person. But yeah, that one-to-one conversation is really important. And I think that those leaders who have the ability to meet with individuals on a really regular basis can really help those individuals through the transition that they're having to make at home.
Well, a lot of leaders, especially, let's take leaders of my generation, 60, 65 or 70-year-old leaders, we try to say that we're compassionate, but sometimes the way we grew up in our business world, it was a tough world, and we seem to be a little bit tougher sometimes than some of the younger generation. Do you have programs to kind of help those leaders? First of all, we got to teach them how to be a little bit more compassionate. And second of all, we got to teach them that well-being and the importance of well-being in their employees is important. It used to be it was all about the company. And I hate to think that there's people still that manage that way, but there is. And sometimes you have to admit that. And, there's nothing like a disaster to slap people in the face to make us change our ways.
Right.
But
Yeah.
do you help leaders through that?
Yeah, I think what you're talking about in my words is empathy,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a big portion of emotional intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
which is something that I do work with leaders on and actually train them on how to improve their emotional intelligence. Unlike IQ, EQ is something that you can build and
Mm-hmm.
improve on. So those things are like understanding yourself and your emotions and managing those emotions, because if you can't manage the emotions, you're not going to be able to connect and build relationships with others. And then it's a build about then being able to read how you are impacting others to create a stronger relationship. So I would say that, yeah, emotional intelligence is probably a cornerstone for all leaders. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, there's been studies showing that emotional intelligence, a high level of emotional intelligence, leads to leadership success.
Mm-hmm.
So I was actually doing some training down in Florida. Oh gosh, this is probably about a year or so ago, and this woman, we went and assessed everybody's emotional intelligence through an online assessment. And when she got it back, she said, "Yeah, now I realize why I'm not as far up in the organization as I think I should be."
Mm-hmm.
And the great thing about her and her profile was she was very goal oriented. So all of a sudden she was clear about her goal,
Mm-hmm.
and she created a plan to improve her emotional intelligence, and since that time she's gotten a promotion. So in fact, she reached out to me recently and thanked me for kind of alerting her to a challenge that she had, that she needed to fill a gap.
So let me ask you, as part of your service, do you help the leader through virtual? I guess, of course, now we're not traveling, as you will. So,
Yes.
you could bring the leader and probably have a one-on-one with the leader, and then maybe the leader's leaders. And
Yes.
do you
Yeah. I
also
mean,
do you go into
my
the organization as well, directly to the workers and the people?
Yeah, I mean, normally it would be a blend.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, it's pretty much virtual. But my goal for organizations is to have leaders who can develop future leaders, so that they have a leadership pipeline,
Mm-hmm.
so that at any point in time, if you have an opening from a leadership perspective, you've got somebody in the organization that is ready and prepared to step into that position. Too often, especially smaller organizations, they're focused on kind of here and now.
Mm-hmm.
They set up a strategic plan, but they don't then look at their people and their organization and determine, okay, what does the organization need to look like to support that business plan moving forward. And it's a lot of that is about identifying your talent,
Mm-hmm.
those high potentials, and developing them to that next position of leadership.
Well, I got to tell you, I think that. Let me ask you a question. Right now, during COVID, we're seeing a lot of businesses extremely struggle. I mean, struggling extremely to the point where a lot of them are just going away. Are
Yeah.
you finding yourself helping some of these organizations that are on the brink of that? And is there anything you could suggest to help people that maybe in their mind they're there? Man, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm at my wits' end.
Yeah, I've been fortunate where I haven't had that situation kind of on the brink. I've got a couple of clients who have had to pivot, and they pivoted early,
Mm-hmm.
and through the PPP, that was a huge help to get them through that process. And my the industries that I work in are generally not the industries that are highly impacted.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not in the retail and hospitality industry, for instance. Those industries, that's not going to recover
Mm-hmm.
to pre-COVID. There's going to be a lot of smaller businesses that just don't make it, and
Mm-hmm.
probably have already shut down.
Mm-hmm.
Most of my companies that I work with are professional service organizations, software, technology, staffing agencies that, they were the ones that had to do a quick pivot because people weren't hiring, but they were needing and now needing temporary help. So there was a pivot there. Payrolling, that a couple clients there, the numbers dropped. Obviously, people, the employee, or not the employees, but the companies that they were supporting didn't have as many employees, so their revenue dropped.
Yeah. When you talk to these organizations, I have a great thought that I came up with a long time ago, and basically I think that most people believe that relationships are the key factor in how they succeed. And even though relationships are extremely important, I pivot that and say that it's really about the experiences through those relationships. Because relationships on their own, they come and go. We all know that. So, how does a leader today that's sitting there in this COVID environment, and maybe they are really conscious to the tune that they have to make sure their employees have well-being, and they're doing everything that they can in that area, and they're having these one-offs. But is there anything a leader can assess on their own? Is there three things? What are the three bullets, if you will? I mean, nothing's that easy, I'm sure. But, how does a leader sitting there maybe watching this say, maybe I ought to reach out to you or someone like you. Maybe I should really explore the things that I think I might know that I don't.
Yeah, I think that, as a leader, there's probably some questions that they could ask themselves to self-reflect. And one of them is, how well do I know where my employees are, meaning from an anxiety, fear, etc. And once I say that okay, I know that individual in the situation really well. What information do I have that supports that? Okay, it's oftentimes I'll ask leaders a question about like their team. How would you rate your team? And they would say, I'll rate them an 8 out of 10. Okay. And what makes it an 8? And really dig into and self-reflect on the question. I think the other is, what am I doing that I can be doing differently? And that's a question that you can ask yourself. But I really encourage leaders to reach out to their employees and ask for feedback and be very genuine about the question in a way that, you don't get defensive and you get the information and you thank them and you do something with it. Sometimes there'll be something that the employee requests that is out of your control. And be honest with them about that. I hear that, but that isn't something I can provide you at this point in time. It's generally some sort of resource, right? And it's outside the budgetary constraints. But those asking for feedback from others is something that not enough leaders do, and it's a powerful way of developing yourself by getting curious with others about how you are viewed and what you can be doing differently to improve your leadership.
Well, I think everybody has to do a self-evaluation. Everybody has to seek out those that can help them do things they can't. And that's what partnerships are for. And, during this time, this is probably the worst we've ever seen it, if anybody alive today. This is a tough time we're all in. But it's people like you, Beth, and there's resources out there for all of our friends. They are there. And I appreciate you having you on the end of the day with Ray. Is there anything you want to add before we end?
Just my final thought is that if individuals are looking for additional resources through this process, my website, executive-velocity.com, has a lot of free downloads related to hiring, developing leaders, and succession planning.
And I'll put a link to that on this video as I post it onto LinkedIn. And Beth, it was fantastic having you on. I look forward to having you again because Beth, we all know this. Status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. don't get stuck in status quo, and we'll see you all on Monday.